Okay, so students, let's look at this idea of authentication, which is linked closely with the other video I posted on validation. So a very simple example would be I've initialized a variable called password, and we ask the user to enter a password, and we have stored a string which contains a valid password. So uppercase and lowercase characters, numbers, and a special character. And it's saying if the password does equal, so you've got two equal signs, the valid password, then we can print password accepted. Else, invalid password, try again. So it's a very simple authentication program there. But let's make something more sophisticated. So I'm just going to hide this with a triple quoted string, which is nice way of just sort of commenting out a whole bunch of code that you might want to put in later. So let's create a 2D array called user list. And the 2D array is where we've got our square brackets, but then we've got square brackets inside the square brackets. So we've got lots of Python lists nested inside each other. Sorry, I'm got to be careful here. And to make it easier to read, I'm going to pop them underneath each other, which you're allowed to do. And it makes it's visually much easier to see what's going on when it's like this. And each list or array is going to have, let's say, username 1. Now these could be real usernames, but I'm just going to put generic things in here. Password 1. And I'm just going to copy this because I'm going to use it to create 2 more arrays, and then just change the 1s to 2s or 3s. So that we could have hundreds and hundreds of arrays in here for each user. So it's very likely that you'll see 2D arrays used in Edexcel GCSE. In real life, there might be dictionaries, which are key value pairs that use the, so you have a key, colon, and then you have a value. So it could well be a dictionary, but that's not part of Edexcel. So 2D arrays are far more likely. And then we could have a variable called found. And because we haven't found anything yet, we'll say false. And maybe we want to have some sort of system where we give them 3 attempts before it locks them out. So I'm going to put attempts equals, just to start off with 1. And then we're going to have this variable called user ID where we want the input from the user. And it will be something simple like enter user ID. So we're going to get input from the user here. And then we can have a while loop, which is based on running as long as 2 conditions are in place. So while our attempts is less than 3, okay, because we're only giving them 3 tries, and not found. Okay, so at the moment, found is false, and not false would be true. So currently, for both of these are true statements. So attempts equals 1, that means this is true. And not false is true. So it's true and true. Therefore, the whole statement is true. So we know this while loop is going to run currently, all right? And then what we can do is we can check each row. And in real life, there'll probably be some sort of binary search, and all the records will be in order, alphabetical, because you need data to be out in alphabetical order before you do a binary search. But what let's do is something more simple. So we're going to use a for loop. I'm going to say for row in user list. So we're going to look at each row. if row square brackets 0, so that's the first item in each row, so it would be username, either 1, 2, or 3. If it does equal our user ID that we've typed in, then we can say found equals true, and we'll break the loop. So we can just stop searching. Now, so let's carry on while we're in our for loop. If found, so that's the same way as saying if true, if found is true. It's just another way of writing it. You can just abbreviate it by just saying if that variable. We can print out user ID found. Okay. Else, what are the other choices here? We add a number to our attempt. So plus equals 1 is another way of adding 1 to our variable, which contains 1 at the moment. So if the user ID wasn't found, we add 1 to it. Now, as the while loop will only allow us to have it was less than 3. Okay, so attempts, and then so it just in fact it'll only give us 2 opportunities to do it, because attempts is already on 1. So if attempts is less than 3, user ID equals inputs, and then we can say user ID not found, try again. The only other thing here we can do is else break. So we've got some nested conditional statements here, and finally what we can do when we're out of the loop is say if not found, print invalid user ID. So let's run it and let's see what happens here. So enter a user ID. I'm going to enter one that's not in there. So I'm going to say user name. So it says user ID not found, try again. I'm going to try again incorrectly. Named like 22, something like that. So invalid user ID. Let's try it again with one that's actually in there. So I'm just going to run it. So I'll put it in down here. User name 1, and it will say user ID found, because username 1 was in this row index 0. So we've got this 2D array that contains lots of usernames and passwords, and we do a very simple sort of search through each row and then check the first item in each row, which was the username, and see if it matches what the user typed in. And if it does, found equals true, so that variable that we gave a default value of false to becomes true, and the program breaks. We're done. And if found, it will just print out to the screen the user ID was found. Else, attempts gets increased by 1, and it will ask the user to input the user ID again. So this way we've got a lot more complexity going on, and we could potentially have this sort of search done as a separate subroutine if it was a binary search or something like that, or we could use some of the built-in search modules in Python maybe. But we've got a lot more techniques being used here: conditional statements, Boolean operators, indexing, but still doing something similar to authenticating. And if we wanted to change this to say password instead of user ID, we could ask for a password as well, and then check the second value in the list as well if we wanted to.